ABC Listen. Podcasts, radio, news, music and more.
The digital town square has become pretty disturbing.
A clip of the alleged attack spreads online.
If you are not currently working to stop 5G, this means you don't understand it.
Violence, misinformation and outrage keeps people on social media, but Australia is fighting back. I'm Matt Bevan, and from If You're Listening, check out my new series, Australia versus the Internet. Find it on the ABC Listen app.
The votes are still being counted, but when the new parliament is formed, it's already clear there will be more female MPs than ever before. But fewer than 10 of them will be sitting on the coalition benches. Peter Dutton had a major woman problem during the campaign. Today, the ABC's Annabel Crabb on whether the coalition can ever win back the female vote. I'm Sam Hawley on Gadigal Land in Sydney. This is ABC News Daily. Annabel, Peter Dutton, I think it's pretty safe to say at this point, he got Australian women riled up during the election campaign. And really, in the end, they told him what they're made of and where he should go.
It's absolutely beyond question to say that Peter Dutton, personally, and the Liberal Party generally, lost an enormous amount of support from women over the course of the campaign. Polling tells you that. Redbridge data shows that the support among women in the 20 key seats that they were tracking fell by 18 percentage points over the course of this year, which is quite an extraordinary thing. And the problems arose when the working from home policy started being heard differently by women.
I don't think it's unreasonable that people, like in many other workplaces, are asked to go back to work for that face-to-face contact, and that's exactly what will happen if there's a change of government after the election.
And then he, I think, very unfortunately said, oh, well, if it creates a problem for women, then there's always job sharing available.
Yes.
There are plenty of opportunities around job sharing, and there are some jobs that are appropriate to be home-based.
What they heard from that, I'm not suggesting it's what Peter Dutton intended, was you don't think my job is real or work, and also your solution is that I go back to 3 days a week and take a 40% pay cut. Like, the kind of sod's law corollary of all of this, of course, is that in all of these marginal seats around Australia where candidates are door knocking, who's at home when they door knock? It's people who are working from home. So it just added up to be a colossal debacle.
Yeah, what else turned women off? It was a pretty formulaic campaign, wasn't it? There was a lot of men around.
Well, I mean, there just are more men in the coalition than women. And I think, a lot of men lost their seats on election night just because 4 out of 5 lower house Liberals, for instance, in the last parliament were men. So, by the way, like the way that the parties campaign, if you look at Peter Dutton, he was always, in high-vis and factories and, putting petrol into utes and stuff like that. Well, yes, but a lot of women are in business and in small business, and they don't look like factories. Look, the other gender difference that I noticed during some of the more detailed demographic polling that I saw during the campaign was around nuclear. And of course, that the coalition sort of stopped talking as much about nuclear as the campaign sort of commenced. And I think that was for a reason. I think that men found the idea of nuclear energy in the future more convincing. They were in less doubt about it than women. Women had a twofold issue with nuclear, according to the research that I saw. One was that they did not think that it would present a relief to their cost of living issues. And the other point on which male and female opinion diverged was around safety.
All right. And as you mentioned, Annabel, it's not just a Peter Dutton problem. This is an issue for the coalition. It seems to have no desire to meet any sort of quotas to strive for equal representation.
Yeah.
Or is that too harsh an assessment?
No, it's entirely fair, and it's understandable because of where the Liberal Party stands. You know, it's a party of free enterprise, and doesn't like the idea of state interference in the freedom of organisations and individuals. Like it's easy to understand why that organisation resists the idea of quotas, right? It's kind of anathema. So, I mean, the Liberal Party's actually had a target now for nearly 10 years to have the pre-selection of women in 50% of seats by the year 2025, which is this year. And of course, 25 has arrived, and I think they had women pre-selected in about 34% of seats, many of them not winnable ones. The Parliament, I mean, there are so many seats still in question that it's sort of rash to put an exact number on it, but it certainly appears that the House of Representatives will have a record number of women. The ABC forecast at the moment is that women will be holding at least 63 seats in the new Parliament, 46 of which will be Labor, 4 will be Liberal.
Wow.
3 will be National, and 7 will be Independent. And there'll be those numbers, that's a baseline, so some of those numbers will go up. But yeah, it's a pretty stark contrast.
Sure is. So the other thing is with the Liberal Party, there is a problem with the treatment of women who've actually been elected to the Parliament. That's a point that journalist Samantha Maiden made on the ABC's Insiders program on the weekend. She thinks that women have never really had a seat at the table once they're actually elected.
The problem that the Liberal Party has with women is huge, but there was always a sense that women are not having a real seat at the table. So they'll let Susan Lee be the deputy leader, but she's kind of on the outer and she's not really in with the boys. They'll give Jane Hume the finance portfolio, but they don't think she's really good and they'll talk about her behind her back.
What do you think of that?
Look, I don't think that's strictly true. I mean, there have certainly been powerful women in the shadow cabinet and so on, and in the cabinet in the Morrison years, there were women who had senior ministries. I think that sometimes when they're making leadership decisions, they tend to just find all sorts of reasons to skirt over the women who are there in contention. It's got to do with just a way of thinking that the people with the power are generally the men sort of thing. I mean, it was interesting back in that mad week in 2018 when Malcolm Turnbull was bundled out of office. I always remember polling in that week showing that the most popular alternative was Julie Bishop, and then of the ranked listings down the bottom were sort of Tony Abbott and then Scott Morrison and then Peter Dutton. Those last two might have been reversed, I can't remember, but it always struck me as fascinating that the Liberal Party subsequently sort of started at the bottom and worked up.
Yeah.
Good afternoon. As you're all aware, there was a ballot conducted in the party room for the leadership of the Liberal Party. The successful candidate was Scott Morrison.
It's a hard culture to shift. The only reason that the Labor Party has just about reached parity, I note that Queensland is sending 6 new Labor women to Canberra, making Annika Wells feel a little bit less lonely. They confronted this in an incredibly painful way 30 years ago when Carmen Lawrence and Julia Gillard and Penny Wong, both babies at that point, fought for and secured a change and a commitment from the 1994 Labor conference that Labor would adopt a quota for pre-selecting. I think at that point it was 30% of women in winnable seats.
It's the moment women in the Labor Party have been fighting for decades. After years of good intentions, the ALP has now pledged itself to ensure that within 8 years, at least 35% of its MPs and senators must be women.
Now that was difficult and upsetting and confronting, and it caused all sorts of fights and ill feeling. There were bemoanings that it was kind of prematurely ending the campaigns of innocent men and so on. But what you've kind of wound up with 30 years later is a parliamentary party where it's not remarkable for anyone to be a female in any particular job. Like all of those women who came in under the quota rules and were initially kind of taunted for being quota girls or whatever, I don't think you would sort of say that to Penny Wong or Tanya Plibersek these days because, they're terrifying. It is a bit cultural sometimes, and it's hard to eliminate those historical cultural associations by just sort of hoping it will change, because it normally doesn't unless you do something really kind of concerted to reverse it.
Well, given everything that you've said then, the Liberal Party will need to think pretty deeply, won't it, about who it wants to replace Peter Dutton, because it actually needs to address this problem, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I mean, one of the problems structurally is that in those areas where particularly professional women are heavily represented, and there's a strong correlation with the seats that we call teal seats, I think that there's a gap there, and it was a gap carelessly created, I think, by the Liberal Party. It's been filled now by an opportunistic grouping of professional women who saw the gap and moved into it. And I don't know how, as an organisation, i.e. the Liberal Party, you respond to that structural threat when you've lost those areas already. And the kind of people who used to represent the Liberal Party in those seats are now, off doing something else.
All right, well, Annabel, while the coalition figures out how to get out of the wilderness and address how to win back the female vote, what can women across the nation actually expect, do you think, over the next 3 years under Labor? What will Anthony Albanese and his team deliver? How progressive will they be?
I will say that in his first term, Anthony Albanese did make a very concerted effort to address women through expanding health services in particular areas that women have been annoyed for decades that they don't get access to under Medicare, so various contraceptive items and so on. Also, you had pay rises for sectors like aged care, where women are, I think, about 85% of the workforce and just catastrophically underpaid historically. So it will be interesting to see, I think, what he feels capable of offering by way of housing. One of the real strategic downsides that can occur when you have a big election victory is that you can get a little bit drunk on your own bathwater and start doing things with your new powers that shake people. I think moderation is always an important consideration for leaders who have had giant victories. The most dangerous thing you can do is start quaffing your own delicious bathwater and thinking, I'm the Messiah, I can do anything. I suspect that Anthony Albanese's been around long enough to not do that, but we'll see.
Yeah.
Also, he's surrounded by sensible women, which helps.
Yes. Which is always a good thing. So just tell me, what's the biggest takeaway for you when it comes to women from this election result?
The most exciting thing about election night is always, for me, like just sitting there and shutting up and watching what people have said.
Yeah.
And I think that the message that we heard was, okay, I'm not entirely in love with the Labor government necessarily, but it seems a safer bet in these troubled times. Also, I'm not that stirred up about, welcome to countries and immigration. So, yeah, it's never dull. It's always an incredibly significant national temperature check, a federal election.
Annabel Crabb is an ABC writer and presenter. This episode was produced by Sydney Peed and Sam Dunn. Audio production by Adair Shepherd. Our supervising producer is David Cody. I'm Sam Hawley. To get in touch with the team, please email us on abcnewsdaily@abc.net.au. Thanks for listening.